I remember the exact moment the night started to feel off. Not dramatic, not scary, just wrong in a quiet way that settles somewhere in your chest and refuses to explain itself. I had just left a friend's place a little after midnight, the kind of casual hangout that stretches longer than you expect. Music, cheap drinks, conversations that go nowhere but still feel important in the moment. By the time I stepped outside, the city had that late-night stillness, cars passing occasionally, streetlights humming, everything slightly too quiet. I didn't feel like walking home, so I did what anyone would do. I called a taxi. At first, everything was normal. App confirmed. Driver assigned. Black sedan, 5 minutes away. I leaned against a lamppost, scrolling through my phone, not really paying attention to anything. Then the car pulled up. It stopped a little farther than usual, like the driver hadn't quite decided where to park. I pushed myself off the post and walked over, glancing at the license plate to match it with the app. It matched. Still, something felt off. I opened the back door and slid inside. "Kevin?" the driver asked. His voice was calm, low, controlled in a way that made it hard to read. "Yeah," I replied, closing the door behind me. The car pulled away almost immediately. For the first minute or two, I didn't think much of it. I checked my phone, responded to a couple of messages, let my head fall back against the seat. Just another ride. Just another night ending the way nights usually do. Then I noticed we weren't going the usual way. I frowned slightly, glancing out the window. The streets looked unfamiliar, not completely wrong, but not the route I expected either. "Hey," I said casually, leaning forward a bit. "Is this the fastest way?" The driver didn't answer right away. Then, "Traffic's bad on the main road." I checked the map on my phone. It didn't show any traffic. That's when the quiet feeling in my chest shifted into something sharper. I sat back slowly, watching him through the rearview mirror. That's when I really saw him for the first time. Reid. I didn't know his name yet, of course, but I remember thinking he didn't look like most drivers I'd had before. Not older, not bored, not detached. He looked present, too present, like he was aware of every small movement I made in the back seat. "You drive this route a lot?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. A faint smile touched his lips. I could see it in the reflection. "Sometimes." Not helpful. I looked back down at my phone, pretending to be less alert than I actually was. My thumb hovered over the screen, debating whether I was overreacting. Maybe I was. Maybe this was just one of those slightly weird, slightly uncomfortable rides you forget about the next day. But then he spoke again. "You live alone?" The question hit me wrong instantly. I looked up. "What?" He met my eyes in the mirror this time. I asked if you live alone. There was no hesitation in his voice. No awkwardness. Just direct. I forced a small laugh. "That's a weird question." He didn't laugh back. "Just making conversation." "No," I said, a little firmer now. "Not really normal conversation." For a second, I thought I'd crossed some invisible line. His expression shifted, subtle, but noticeable. Then he nodded slightly. "Fair." Silence filled the car again. But it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This one felt heavier. I watched the streets more carefully now. Turn after turn, none of them matching the route I knew by heart. My phone screen felt too bright in my hand as I opened the map again. We were definitely off course. "Hey," I said, this time not bothering to sound casual. "You missed the turn back there." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did," I replied. "I know where I live." Another pause. Then he sighed softly, like I'd just confirmed something for him. "I know," he said. That made my stomach drop. "You know what?" I asked. "Where you live." The words landed slow. Heavy. I sat up straighter. "How would you know that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned onto another street quieter than the others. Barely any lights, no people. My pulse started picking up. "Okay," I said, sharper now. "Pull over." Reid didn't react. "Pull over," I repeated. Still nothing. That's when the fear really hit. Not panic. Not yet. But something cold and clear. "Dude, I'm serious," I said. "Stop the car." Finally, he spoke. "You can relax, Kevin." The way he said my name didn't feel normal. It didn't feel like a driver reading it off an app. It felt like he already knew it. "I am relaxed," I said, even though I wasn't. "Just stop the car." He slowed down slightly, but didn't stop. Instead, he glanced at me again through the mirror. And this time, there was something different in his eyes. Not threatening. Not angry. Just certain. "I've been trying to figure out how to talk to you," he said. My brain stalled for half a second. "What?" He exhaled, like he'd been holding that in for a while. Didn't expect it to happen like this. A chill ran down my spine. Have we met before? I asked slowly. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. I searched my memory instantly. Parties. Work. Random encounters. Nothing. I don't remember you, I said. I know, he replied quietly. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because the way he said it, it didn't sound offended. It sounded expected. The car finally slowed to a stop. But not where I lived. Not anywhere I recognized. A quiet street. Dim lights. No movement. Reid turned the engine off. The sudden silence was loud. I didn't move. Why are we here? I asked. He rested his hands on the steering wheel, staring forward for a moment before answering. Because I didn't want to say this while driving. Every instinct in me told me to open the door and leave. But something held me there. Not trust. Something else. Something I didn't understand yet. He finally turned around slightly, just enough to look at me directly. My name's Reid, he said. I didn't respond. I know this looks bad, he continued. I get that. That's an understatement, I muttered. A small, almost nervous smile appeared on his face. Yeah, he admitted. Probably. There was a pause. Then he said something that made everything shift. I saw you 3 weeks ago. I frowned. Where? At a bookstore, he said. You were arguing with the cashier about a discount that didn't exist. I blinked. That sounded like me. I wasn't arguing, I said automatically. You were, he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice now. But you were wrong. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of something unexpected. Embarrassment. You remembered that? I asked. I remembered you, he corrected. That landed differently. The tension in the car changed, not gone, but complicated. You followed me? I asked carefully. No, he said quickly. Not like that. Then how do you know where I live? He hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Reid, I said, my voice lower now, more controlled. That's not normal. I know, he said again. He stopped himself, ran a hand through his hair. I didn't plan this, he added. I just saw your name pop up on the ride and what? I pressed. His eyes met mine fully now. And for the first time, he didn't look calm. He looked nervous. And I didn't want to miss the chance again. That was the moment the fear shifted into something else entirely. Not gone. Just tangled with something unexpected. Because whatever this was, it wasn't random anymore. And I had a feeling this night was only getting started. I should have left. That's the first thing I thought, sitting in the back seat of that car, engine off, street too quiet, and a guy I didn't know who somehow knew me looking at me like this moment actually mattered to him. Every logical part of my brain was screaming the same thing. Get out. Now. But I didn't move. Okay, I said slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. Let's say I believe you didn't plan this. That still doesn't explain why you know where I live. Reid looked down for a second, like he was choosing his words carefully. I didn't follow you home, he said. Not like you think. That's not reassuring, I replied. I saw you again, he continued. A few days after the bookstore. You were outside your building, on the phone. I froze slightly. You were pacing, he added. Looked stressed. Kept running your hand through your hair like you were trying to solve something. I did do that. Way too often. And you just remembered the building? I asked. He nodded. That's still weird, Reid. I know. The way he kept saying that I know like he wasn't even trying to defend himself, just stating facts, made it harder to stay fully angry. Which honestly annoyed me more. You could have just talked to me then, I said. I thought about it, he admitted. And he gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. You look like you would have told me to go away. He wasn't wrong. I leaned back against the seat, crossing my arms. So instead, you decided to what? Wait until I accidentally got into your car. When you say it like that, it sounds worse. It is worse. That actually made him laugh under his breath. Not loudly, not confidently, just real. And that threw me off more than anything else. Because this wasn't how I expected this situation to feel. I expected fear, anger, maybe even confrontation. Not this weird, tense conversation where I couldn't quite figure him out. Why me? I asked suddenly. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Reid looked at me again, more serious now. I don't know, he said. That's not an answer. I know, he repeated, softer this time. But it's the truth. Silence settled between us again. I studied him more carefully now. Early 20s, probably around my age. Clean, but not overly put together. The kind of guy you wouldn't notice immediately, but once you did, you'd remember. And apparently he had. For 3 weeks. I asked. He nodded. You've been thinking about me for 3 weeks? Another pause. Yeah. That landed heavier than I expected. Not flattering. Not exactly. Just a lot. You don't even know me? I said. I know enough. That's not how that works. It is for me, he replied quietly. I exhaled slowly, trying to ground myself again. Okay, I said. Let's reset for a second. He waited. You picked me up as a driver, I continued. Instead of taking me home, you brought me somewhere random, told me you've been noticing me for weeks, and now we're having this conversation like it's normal. When you summarize it like that, it sounds bad, he said again. It is bad, Reid. He nodded. I'm not saying it isn't. Another silence. But this one felt different. Less tense. More honest. I can take you home now, he said after a moment. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. End this. Get out. Forget it happened. But another part of me, one I didn't fully trust, was curious. Why didn't you just message me through the app? I asked. He shook his head. That's not real. And this is. I gestured around the car. A faint smile again. More real than that. I shouldn't have understood what he meant. But I did. And that annoyed me even more. You're making this really hard to categorize, I muttered. Good or bad, he asked. I haven't decided yet. That earned a quiet chuckle. Then, more seriously, I wasn't trying to scare you. You did. I figured. Another pause. I'm sorry, he said. That one felt different. Not automatic. Not defensive. Just straightforward. I studied him for a second longer. Okay, I said finally. Take me home. He nodded immediately, like he'd been expecting that. Yeah. Okay. The engine started again. The car pulled back onto the road. This time, he followed the correct route. I kept my eyes on the window, watching familiar streets come back into view. The tension in my chest eased slightly with every turn I recognized. But my mind didn't settle. Not even close. After a few minutes, Reid spoke again. You don't have to ever see me again, he said. I glanced at him through the mirror. That's probably the smart option, I replied. Probably. But, he asked. I frowned. I didn't say but. You were going to. I hesitated. Annoying. He wasn't wrong. I stopped myself, then sighed. I don't get you. That makes two of us. No, seriously, I continued. You're either completely insane or something else. Something else sounds better, he said lightly. I shook my head. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing at you, he said. I just don't want this to feel worse than it already does. It didn't. That was the problem. The car slowed as we approached my building. My building. Familiar. Safe. Normal. Everything this ride hadn't been. He pulled up to the curb and stopped. Neither of us moved right away. Well, I said after a second, reaching for the door handle. That was weird. Yeah, he agreed. I opened the door, stepping out onto the sidewalk. The night air hit me like a reset. I should have just walked away. Gone inside. Locked the door. End of story. But instead, I turned back. Reid had rolled down the window, watching me. Not intensely. Not expectantly. Just waiting. For the record, I said, leaning slightly toward the window. This was not a good first impression. I figured. But, I added, before I could overthink it, it was memorable. That made something shift in his expression. Subtle, but real. I'll take that, he said. I nodded once, then turned and walked toward my building. This time, I didn't look back. But I felt it. That strange, quiet pull. Like something had started that I didn't fully understand yet. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop. I didn't expect to think about him again. That's what I told myself, at least. The moment I got inside my apartment, I locked the door, leaned back against it, and just stood there for a second. Silence. Normal, familiar silence. No weird conversations. No off-route drives. No guy watching me through a rearview mirror like I was something he'd been waiting for. Just me. Okay, I muttered to myself. That was insane. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to the kitchen. Poured myself a glass of water I didn't really need, just to have something to do. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't panicking, which, honestly, felt more unsettling than if I had been. Because instead of fear, I was thinking about what he said. I didn't want to miss the chance again. I took a sip of water, staring at nothing. Yeah, no, I said out loud. We're not doing that. I set the glass down a little harder than necessary and grabbed my phone, opening the Ride app. Trip completed. Driver, Reid. Rating prompt popped up. I stared at it for a long moment. This was simple, right? Bad experience. Wrong route. Weird behavior. Low rating. Report. Done. That's what a normal person would do. My thumb hovered over the stars, then dropped. I locked my phone instead. Not my problem, I said quietly. And for a few hours, it wasn't. The next morning felt normal. Too normal. Sunlight through the window. Notifications on my phone. The usual routine pulling me back into something predictable. I almost convinced myself the whole thing had been exaggerated in my head. Almost. Until I opened my phone again and saw a notification from the app. You rode with Reid last night. Want to ride again? I stared at the screen. That shouldn't have meant anything. It was just an algorithm. Just timing. Just coincidence. Still, I felt that same quiet shift in my chest. Annoyed, I swiped it away. Stop, I muttered. It was one weird ride. That's it. I got ready, left the apartment, and forced myself into my day. Work, coffee, conversations that didn't matter. But every now and then, my mind drifted back. The way he looked at me, the way he wasn't defensive, the way he said my name. By the time evening came around, I was irritated with myself. Why does this even matter? I said under my breath while walking home. It shouldn't. And yet, it did. 3 days passed. Nothing happened. No messages. No accidental encounters. No sign of him, which should have been a good thing. Instead, it felt unfinished. I hated that feeling. So on the 4th day, I did something stupid. I ordered another taxi. Not because I needed one. Not really. I could have walked. It wasn't far. But I didn't. I stood outside my building, phone in hand, heart doing something slightly faster than usual. Just a ride, I told myself. That's it. The app searched for a driver. Matched. I looked at the name. Not Reid. Something in me dropped. Of course not. I muttered, shaking my head at myself. What was I even expecting? I almost canceled. But I didn't. The car arrived. Different driver. Normal ride. Too normal. By the time I got home, I felt stupid. Great, I said, tossing my phone onto the couch. Now you're chasing weird taxi experiences. That's healthy. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing a little. This was ridiculous. It was over. It should have been over. It wasn't. Because the next night, he showed up again. I was walking back from a late grocery run, headphones in, not really paying attention to anything, until a car slowed down next to me. I ignored it at first. Happens all the time. But then it matched my pace. I pulled one earbud out, glancing over. Black sedan, window rolling down. And, yeah, of course, Reid. You're kidding, I said under my breath. He didn't look amused. You always walk this late, he asked. I stopped walking. So this is a thing you do? I said, raising an eyebrow. Just appear. I didn't plan this, he said quickly. Sure. I didn't, he repeated. I was finishing a ride. Saw you. That didn't make it better. If this is your version of casual, we need to have a serious conversation, I said. That got a small smile out of him. I know this looks bad. You keep saying that like it's helping. He exhaled, running a hand over the steering wheel. He stopped himself. I didn't think I'd actually see you again. Well, here I am, I said dryly. Yeah, he replied quietly. There was a pause. Cars passed behind him. Someone honked, but neither of us moved. You need a ride? He asked after a second. I stared at him. Seriously? It's a normal question. No, it's not, I said. Not after everything. Fair. Another pause. Then, before I could overthink it. Fine, I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Yeah. But this time, you're taking me straight home. I will. And no weird conversations. He hesitated. That might be harder. I rolled my eyes and walked around to the passenger side this time, opening the door and getting in. If you say anything creepy, I'm getting out, I warned. Noted. The car pulled away. For a minute, neither of us spoke. It felt different now. Less tense. Still strange, but not unfamiliar anymore. So, I said finally, staring ahead. Do you always pick up the same passengers twice? No. Just me. Yeah. I huffed a quiet laugh. Of course. He glanced at me briefly. You came back too. That caught me off guard. I didn't come back for you, I said quickly. I didn't say you did. But you meant it. He didn't deny it. Annoying. I just needed a ride, I added. Right. The way he said it calm, not challenging, made it worse somehow. We drove in silence for another minute. Then, I almost reported you, I admitted. I figured. But I didn't. He nodded slightly. Why not? I hesitated. Because I stopped, then shook my head. I don't know. That was the truth. He didn't push it further. Instead, he said quietly, I'm glad you didn't. Something about that. Simple. Honest. It landed. We pulled up outside my building again. This time, everything felt different. Not safer. Not more dangerous. Just changed. I reached for the door. Paused. Then looked at him. You're still weird, I said. I know. But, I added, before I could stop myself. Less concerning than before. I'll take that. I nodded. Then, do you always wait 3 weeks to talk to people you notice? I asked. He looked at me, surprised. Usually longer. I smirked slightly. Wow. I feel special. You are, he said, without hesitation. That shut me up for a second. I opened the door quickly, stepping out before I could react to that. Good night, Reid. Good night. Kevin. I walked toward my building again. This time, I did look back. He was still there, watching, not in a creepy way, not in a controlling way, just present. And for some reason, that made it harder to walk away. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared. That would have been easier to deal with. Fear is simple, clear. You either run from it or fight it. This wasn't that. This was something else. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the past few days like my brain was trying to solve something it didn't fully understand. Reid's voice, the way he looked at me, the fact that I got into his car again. Yeah, I muttered to myself. That was a great decision. I turned onto my side, grabbing my phone, checking the time. 2:17 a.m. Of course, my mind drifted again back to the way he said. You are. Simple. No hesitation. No weird tone. Just direct. I exhaled slowly, dragging a hand over my face. Okay, stop, I said quietly. You don't know this guy. That was the problem. I didn't. And yet, it didn't feel like I was dealing with a stranger anymore. The next few days settled into something dangerously normal. No random encounters. No late-night drive-bys. No Reid. And I told myself that was good. It was good. But every time my phone buzzed, there was this split second where I thought, maybe. It never was. By day 5, I was irritated again. At him. At myself. At the fact that this even mattered. So I did what any rational person would do. I tried to ignore it harder. It worked. For exactly 2 more days. I was leaving work late, later than usual, the sky already dark, streets buzzing with that end-of-day energy. I debated walking. Didn't. Pulled out my phone. Opened the app. Stared at it. Don't be stupid, I muttered. Then hit request ride anyway. The wait felt longer this time. Driver assigned. I didn't check the name immediately. Didn't want to. Didn't want to set myself up for that weird, unnecessary disappointment again. But curiosity always wins. I looked. Reid. My stomach dropped. Not in fear. Not even in shock. Just impact. Of course, I whispered. The car was 3 minutes away. I could cancel. I should cancel. I didn't. When he pulled up, it felt different from the first time. No hesitation. No weird distance. Just a normal stop at the curb. I walked over slowly, opening the passenger door again instead of the back this time. You stalking me now? Or is this still coincidence? I said as I got in. He glanced at me, a small smile already forming. Still coincidence. Convenient. For me, yeah. I shut the door, shaking my head slightly. You're unbelievable. I've been told worse. The car pulled into traffic. For a moment, neither of us spoke. But it wasn't awkward. Just quiet. You look tired, he said after a bit. I glanced at him. That's a weird thing to say. You do. Thanks. Not an insult. Still not great. He huffed a quiet laugh. I mean it, he said. You okay? The question caught me off guard. Not because of what he asked, but how he asked it. Like he actually cared about the answer. Yeah, I said after a second. Just work. He nodded. Didn't push. And that made me relax a little. See, I said after a moment. You can have normal conversations. Trying something new. Keep it up. Another small smile. We drove in silence for a bit longer. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt easy, which was dangerous. Because nothing about this situation should feel easy. You ever gonna explain why me? I asked suddenly. He didn't answer right away. I watched him this time. Not through a mirror, but directly. His grip on the wheel tightened slightly. I told you, he said. I don't really know. That's not enough. I know. Then try. He exhaled slowly. I noticed you, he said. That's it. That's not it. It is for me. I shook my head. You don't just remember someone for weeks because they argued over a discount. You didn't argue, he corrected lightly. You were just very confident and very wrong. I rolled my eyes. Focus. He smiled briefly, then grew more serious again. You looked real, he said. I frowned. What does that even mean? Like you weren't trying to be anything, he explained. You were just there? Annoyed. Honest. Not filtering it. That's your reason? It's what caught my attention. That's a terrible reason. Probably. I stared at him for a second. You're weird. I know. But you're consistent about it. That helps, right? A little. We stopped at a red light. The city lights reflected across the windshield, casting everything in a soft glow. For a second, it felt like we were paused outside of everything else. Why didn't you message me through the app after the first ride? I asked. He glanced at me. I thought about it. And it wouldn't have meant anything. That's not true. It is for me. I studied him again. You do everything the hard way, don't you? Yeah. Why? He shrugged slightly. Because easy doesn't feel real. That hit somewhere deeper than I expected. I didn't respond right away. Didn't know how to. The car pulled up outside my building again. Same spot. Same quiet street. But nothing about it felt the same anymore. He put the car in park, engine still running. Neither of us moved immediately. You didn't ask me anything this time, he said. About what? About whether I know where you live. I smirked slightly. You already proved that. Fair. I reached for the door handle. Paused. Then looked at him. You're still not normal. You know that, right? I'm getting that a lot. But I hesitated. There it was again. That but. You're less unsettling when you're not kidnapping me. I finished. I didn't kidnap you. You kind of did. He smiled. Noted. I'll avoid that next time. Good. I opened the door, stepping out. But this time, I didn't close it right away. I leaned slightly against it, looking back at him. You working tomorrow? I asked before I could stop myself. His expression shifted instantly. Subtle, but real. Yeah, he said. Why? I shrugged, trying to play it off. No reason. He didn't call me out on it. Didn't push. Just nodded. Yeah, he repeated. I nodded back, then finally shut the door. Walking toward my building, I felt it again. That pull. Stronger now. More defined. And this time, I didn't even try to ignore it. The next day, I told myself I wasn't going to do anything about it. No checking the app. No accidentally needing a ride. No standing outside longer than necessary like some idiot waiting for a black sedan to magically appear. I meant it. For most of the day, I actually stuck to it. Work was busy enough to keep my head straight. Meetings, deadlines, people asking me questions I barely cared about. It grounded me in something real, something that had nothing to do with late-night rides or a guy named Reid who somehow got under my skin way too fast. But by the time evening rolled around, yeah, that's when it got harder. I was walking home again. Same street, same time. And this time, I was paying attention. Every car that slowed down, every black sedan that passed I noticed. Which was pathetic. Get a grip, I muttered under my breath. I shoved my hands into my pockets and forced myself to keep walking without looking around. He wasn't going to show up. And even if he did, so what? What was I even expecting at this point? Another weird conversation? Another ride that felt way too easy for something that started completely wrong? I exhaled sharply, trying to shake it off. That's when headlights slowed beside me. I didn't look immediately. Didn't want to give myself that satisfaction. But then the car matched my pace. Again, I stopped. Turned. Black sedan. Of course. I laughed under my breath, more to myself than anything. You've got to be kidding me, I said, stepping closer as the window rolled down. Reid looked up at me. And this time, he didn't look surprised. You were hoping it was me, he said. I scoffed. Don't push it. A small smile. I'm not. You are. Maybe a little. I shook my head, but I didn't step away. Which said enough. You just drive around this area now? I asked. Not exactly. Then what? He hesitated. Then, honest as ever. I've been hoping I'd run into you again. There it was. No filter. No pretending. Just said. I should have shut that down immediately. Instead, yeah, I said, crossing my arms. That working out for you? He looked at me for a second. Then, yeah, that hit harder than I expected. I looked away for a moment, trying to ignore the way that landed somewhere in my chest. You're really not subtle, I muttered. I don't think subtle would work with you. You're not wrong. He opened the passenger door this time. Didn't say anything. Just waited. I looked at the car, then at him, then back at the car. This is becoming a pattern, I said. Only if you get in. I held his gaze for a second longer. Then, yeah, I got in. This ride felt different immediately. Not tense, not cautious, just familiar, which was insane. You know this is still weird, right? I said, buckling my seatbelt. I know, and not in a normal way. I know. You keep saying that like it cancels it out. It doesn't, he admitted. Good. Just checking. He smiled slightly, pulling the car back into the street. So, he said after a moment. Where to? I glanced at him. You know where I live. I do. Then why ask? Because I want you to say it. I frowned. Why? Because it sounds better when it's your choice. That was new. And it made something shift again. Home, I said after a second. He nodded. Okay. We drove for a few minutes in silence. But not the kind that needed to be filled. The kind that just existed. I didn't think I'd see you again after the first night, I admitted. I didn't think you'd get back in the car, he replied. Yeah, well, I shrugged. Questionable decisions. Glad you made them. I glanced at him. You always this direct? Only when I mean it. I looked away again. Annoying. Why didn't you report me? He asked after a while. I sighed softly. You're really stuck on that, huh? Yeah. Because I didn't feel like you were dangerous. That was the truth. Even if it sounded stupid. He didn't respond right away. Then, good, he said quietly. Don't get comfortable, I added quickly. You were still out of line. I know. You keep saying that. Because it's true. I studied him again. You're not defensive at all. No point. That's not normal either. I've been told. I huffed a quiet laugh. You really don't fit into any category, do you? Not one you like. Not one I understand. He nodded slightly. Fair. We stopped at another red light. The city felt slower tonight. Or maybe it was just me. You ever think this is a bad idea? I asked. All the time. And you still do it. Yeah. Why? He looked at me. Not quickly. Not casually. Just directly. Because I'd rather deal with a bad idea than regret not doing anything. That stayed. I didn't respond. Didn't even try. When we reached my building, he didn't turn the engine off this time. Just parked. Waiting. I unbuckled my seatbelt. Then paused. Again. You're not going to ask for my number, are you? I said. He shook his head. No. That surprised me. Why not? Because this works. This. I gestured between us. Random encounters and weird rides. Yeah. That's not sustainable. I'm not thinking that far ahead. I stared at him. You're unbelievable. I know. But I hesitated again. There it was. That word. Always that word. But you're consistent, I finished. I try. I opened the door. Stepped out. Then leaned down slightly, looking back at him. If I see you again, I said slowly. It doesn't mean anything. He nodded. I know. And I'm not looking for anything. I know. And this is still weird. I know. I narrowed my eyes slightly. You're annoying. That made him smile properly this time. Yeah. I shook my head, stepping back. Good night, Reid. Good night, Kevin. I turned and walked toward my building again. But this time, I was smiling. Just slightly. Without even realizing it. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a weird situation anymore. It was turning into something else. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. But something I definitely wasn't walking away from either. At some point, it stopped feeling accidental. That was the problem. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. It wasn't just running into each other or random rides. There was a pattern now, and the worst part? I was part of it. A week passed. And by passed, I mean I spent 7 days pretending I wasn't thinking about him, while absolutely thinking about him. Not constantly. Not obsessively. Just in those quiet moments. Walking home. Waiting for coffee. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Reid had this annoying way of slipping into my thoughts when I wasn't paying attention. Like he didn't belong there, but also didn't feel out of place. By Friday night, I gave up pretending. I didn't even try to justify it. I opened the app. Requested a ride. Stared at the screen. Driver assigned. I checked immediately this time. Reid. My chest tightened. Not nerves. Not fear. Just anticipation. Okay, I exhaled quietly. Let's see where this goes. He pulled up faster than expected. Like he was already nearby. No, I wasn't going to go there. I stepped outside and walked straight to the car, opening the passenger door without hesitation. You're starting to feel scheduled, I said as I got in. He glanced at me, a faint smirk on his face. Maybe you're just predictable. I scoffed. Don't get comfortable. Too late. I shut the door, shaking my head slightly. You're getting worse. Or you're getting used to me. I didn't respond to that, which was answer enough. We pulled into the street. No awkwardness. No tension. Just that same strange, easy quiet. You didn't ask where I'm going, I said after a minute. I know where you live. That's still creepy when you say it. I can ask if you want. I thought about it. No. He smiled slightly. Thought so. We drove in silence for a bit longer. But tonight felt different. He felt different. More relaxed. More sure. And that made me aware. Of him. Of this. Of whatever this was turning into. You're not going to just keep doing this forever, right? I asked suddenly. Doing what? This, I gestured vaguely. The whole mysterious driver thing. He thought about it for a second. I don't know. That's not a great answer. It's an honest one. I leaned back in my seat, watching the city lights pass by. You ever think about what this actually is? I asked. Yeah. And? He glanced at me, then back at the road. I think it's something we haven't messed up yet. That stayed. I turned my head slightly, studying him again. You're careful with your words, I said. Only when it matters. And this matters? He didn't hesitate. Yeah. The car slowed near a quieter street. Not my street. I noticed immediately. Reid, I said, sharper now. You missed the turn. I know. My stomach tightened slightly. Then why are we? Relax, he said quickly. I'm not doing that again. That's reassuring. There's a place here, he added. I just thought maybe we could talk without you immediately leaving. I stared at him. You're suggesting a detour. I'm suggesting a conversation. That's how this started last time. And it didn't go that bad. That's debatable. He smiled slightly. Yeah, fair. The car slowed to a stop near a quiet corner. Not isolated. Not sketchy. Just calm. Streetlights. A closed cafe. Empty sidewalks. He turned off the engine. And waited. Didn't look at me right away. Didn't push. Just gave me the choice. I exhaled slowly. You're really testing my judgment, you know that? I know. And I keep making bad decisions. I don't think they're bad. That's because you benefit from them. He huffed a quiet laugh. Also fair. Silence settled. But this time, it wasn't tense. It felt like something was about to shift. You could have just asked me to hang out, I said. I thought about it. And you would have said no. Yeah, probably. He nodded. So I worked around it. I shook my head, but I couldn't help the small smile that slipped through. You're impossible. I'm here. That's not the same thing. Feels like it is. I turned slightly in my seat, facing him more directly now. This wasn't a ride anymore. This was something else. You've been thinking about me this whole time, haven't you? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Yeah. That direct. Again. And you're just okay admitting that? No point hiding it. You don't think that's intense? I think it's honest. I held his gaze for a second longer. You don't know me. I said again, softer this time. I know enough. You keep saying that. Because it doesn't change. Another pause. Then, what if I'm not what you think? I asked. He leaned back slightly, studying me now. Then I'll figure that out, he said. That's a risk. So is ignoring it. Yeah, that hit. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything neither of us was saying. Everything building. Everything shifting. You're not like anyone I've met, I admitted quietly. He didn't react immediately. Then, good or bad, he asked. I haven't decided yet. That's better than bad. Barely. He smiled. But softer this time. Not teasing. Just there. I looked away for a second, then back at him. And this time, I didn't hesitate. If this turns into something real, I said slowly, it can't stay like this. He nodded. I know. No weird half steps. No, hiding behind this. I gestured around the car. I know. And no more off-route surprises. Definitely no more of those. I studied him. You're agreeing too easily. I've been waiting for you to say something like that. That caught me off guard. You have? Yeah. Why? Because it means you're still here. That was the moment. The shift. The point where this stopped being just strange and started being something real. I looked at him for a long second. Then, okay, I said quietly. He didn't ask what that meant. Didn't push. Just nodded. Okay. When we finally pulled up to my building this time, everything felt different. Not uncertain. Not confusing. Just unfinished. In a way that didn't feel bad anymore. I opened the door. stepped out, then leaned down slightly, looking at him again. You're still weird, I said. I know, but I don't think you're a bad idea anymore. That made him pause, just for a second. Then, that's new. Don't ruin it. I won't. I nodded. Then, good night, Reid. Good night, Kevin. I walked inside. But this time, I knew. This wasn't random anymore. This wasn't accidental. And whatever this was becoming, it wasn't going to stay inside that car. After that night, everything changed. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way. No sudden confessions. No instant clarity. Just a shift. Subtle, but impossible to ignore. The first thing that changed? We stopped pretending it was random. The next evening, I didn't open the app. I didn't wait around. I didn't walk slower or check every passing car. I just got home, dropped my keys on the counter, and sat on the couch like any normal person would. And still, I felt it. That quiet expectation. Not anxiety. Not impatience. Just awareness. Like something was about to happen. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second. Then answered. Hello. A brief pause. Then, hey, Reid. Of course. You got my number now? I said, raising an eyebrow even though he couldn't see me. You left it on the app. I didn't give it to you. You didn't hide it either. That's a weak argument. Still worked. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the small smile forming. You're unbelievable. I'm consistent. That's not a defense. Wasn't trying to defend it. I leaned back into the couch, exhaling softly. So, I said, what is this? Me calling you, he replied simply. Obviously, a quiet chuckle on the other end. I wanted to see you without it being accidental. There it was. Clear. Direct. No car. No detours. No weird setup. Just him. That's new, I said. Yeah. You nervous? A pause. A little. That caught me off guard. You don't sound like it. I wasn't in a car this time. I laughed quietly. Fair. Silence settled between us for a second. But not awkward. Just real. So, he asked. So what? Are you going to say yes? You didn't ask anything yet. I'm about to. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. Okay, I said. Go ahead. Another small pause. Then, come out for a bit, he said. Just walk. Talk. No rides. No weird situations. I stared at the floor for a second. This felt different. Cleaner. Simpler. Which somehow made it more serious. You planned this? I asked. Yeah. How long? Since you said it couldn't stay like that. That hit. I exhaled slowly. You listen more than I thought. Only to you. That. Yeah. Still not used to that. Give me 10 minutes, I said before I could overthink it. Okay. The call ended. And for a second, I just sat there, processing. This wasn't a weird situation anymore. This was a choice. A clear one. And I was about to make it. 10 minutes later, I was outside. Same street. Same building. But everything felt different. No app. No car. Just me. Waiting. And then, headlights. But this time, he didn't pull up next to me. He parked, turned the engine off, and got out. That alone. That changed everything. Reid walked toward me like this was normal. Like we'd done this 100 times before. No hesitation. No distance. Just there. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a second. No car between us. No barrier. No reason to pretend this was anything other than what it was. You look better today, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Wow. So I looked bad before. You looked tired. That again. You did. I shook my head slightly. You always start conversations like that. Only when it's true. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't argue. We started walking. No destination. No plan. Just side by side. And for the first time, it felt normal. Actually normal. So this is your solution? I asked after a minute. Remove the car. Pretend everything's fine? I'm not pretending anything, he said. Then what are you doing? Trying to do it right. I glanced at him. That's new. I learned. From what? From you. That stayed. We walked in silence for a bit. But it wasn't empty. It felt steady. You're quieter like this, I said. No steering wheel to hold on to. Was that your safety thing? Maybe. I smirked slightly. That explains a lot. We stopped at a corner, waiting for the light. For a second, neither of us moved. Then, can I ask you something? He said. Depends. Why didn't you walk away? I looked at him. Really looked this time. Not through glass. Not through reflections. Just him. Because you didn't feel wrong, I said honestly. That's a low bar. It's actually not. He nodded slightly. I'm glad. The light changed. We crossed. Still side by side. Not touching, but close. You still think I'm a bad idea? He asked. I thought about it. Then, no. He didn't react right away. Good, he said quietly. But, I added. Of course. He glanced at me. There's always a but with you. Yeah. I stopped walking. He stopped too. Facing me now. This only works if it's real, I said. No games. No weird setups. No half versions of this. I know. And no disappearing. I won't. I held his gaze. You're very confident about that. I'm sure about this. That was the moment. Again. But stronger this time. Because now, we were standing in it. Not hiding behind anything. Okay, I said. Same word as before. Different meaning now. He nodded. Same understanding. We didn't need to say anything else. We just kept walking. And this time, it didn't feel like something uncertain anymore. It felt like something that had actually started. And for the first time since that first ride, I wasn't questioning it. I was choosing it. Things didn't suddenly become perfect after that. That's not how it works. There was no moment where everything clicked into place and all the weirdness just disappeared. No clean transition from strange taxi encounters to normal relationship. If anything, it got more real, and that made it harder. A few days after we started meeting like that, walking, talking, actually spending time without the whole accidental setup, I noticed something. Reid wasn't trying to impress me. At all. No over-the-top effort. No pretending to be something he wasn't. He was just consistent. If he said he'd call, he called. If he said he'd show up, he showed up. And for some reason, that hit deeper than anything else. One evening, we were sitting on a bench near a quiet street, the city buzzing in the distance, but not close enough to interrupt us. We'd been talking about nothing for a while. Work. Random stories. Things that didn't matter. Until they did. You've been quiet, he said. I'm thinking. About. I leaned back slightly, looking up at the sky for a second before answering. You're not what I expected. He didn't react immediately. Then, good or bad? I still haven't decided. That made him smile. You've been saying that for a while. Because it keeps being true. I turned my head slightly, looking at him. You're not intense in the way I thought you were. How did you think I was? Like, I hesitated, trying to find the right words. Like you'd push too hard. Or expect something. And I don't. No. He nodded slowly. I told you, he said. I just didn't want to miss the chance. That line again. But this time, it didn't feel strange. It felt grounded. You know what still bothers me? I said after a moment. He glanced at me. What? That first night. He exhaled quietly. Yeah. You crossed a line. I know. And if you tried that now, I'd walk away. I know. I studied him. You're really sure about everything now. I'm sure about not doing that again. That's not the same thing. No, he admitted. But it's a start. I nodded slightly. It was. Silence settled between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like space. The kind you don't need to fill. After a minute, he spoke again. Can I ask you something? You always do. He huffed a quiet laugh. Fair. Then, more serious. Why did you give me a chance? I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth wasn't simple. I don't know, I said finally. You were wrong. That part never changed. I know. But you weren't fake, I added. And that's rare. He didn't say anything to that. Just listened. And you didn't try to control anything after, I continued. You just showed up. Normally. I was trying not to mess it up. You were trying to fix it. Yeah. I nodded. That matters. He shifted slightly on the bench, turning more toward me. And for the first time, there was no hesitation in the way he looked at me. No uncertainty. No distance. You still think this is a bad idea? He asked. I held his gaze, then shook my head. No. That was it. No, but this time. No hesitation. Just. No. Something changed in his expression. Subtle, but real. And for the first time since all of this started, he looked relieved. Not excited. Not overwhelmed. Just relieved. We sat there a little longer. Not talking. Just existing in the same space. And somehow, that felt like the most important part. Later that night, walking back toward my building, I realized something. There was no tension anymore. No second-guessing every step. No questioning why I was still here. It just made sense. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. We stopped in front of my building. Same spot where everything had started. Different feeling entirely. You're not inviting me up, are you? He said lightly. I smirked. Don't push it. Worth a try. Not even close. He laughed softly. Okay. I stepped closer slightly, not thinking too much about it. Just doing it. I'm glad I didn't report you, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I nodded. Then, I almost walked away, I admitted. I know. You did. Yeah. How? He looked at me for a second. Then, because I would have done the same. That was it. That was the final piece. The thing that made everything click into place. Not how we met. Not how strange it started. But the fact that we both understood where the line was. And chose not to cross it again. Good night, Reid, I said. Good night, Kevin. I turned and walked inside. No hesitation. No looking back this time. Because I didn't need to. Some stories start the right way. Simple. Clean. Predictable. This wasn't one of them. This started wrong. It crossed lines. It made no sense. But somewhere along the way, it became real. Not because of how it began, but because of what we chose after. And that's the part that stayed.